Hey, welcome to Coach's Corner Show, everybody. This is the four-wheel drive every Wednesday night. I'm your host, Coach Tripp, along with my high school teammate from Liverpool High School, Billy Pendock, Syracuse defensive line great. Part of the four-wheel drive, actually. That's his truck. That's his four-wheel drive behind him. And right there is Billy, Blaze Winter. He's busy. He's not usually joins us every Wednesday. There's Timmy Green, All-American and Rhodes Scholar. Timmy Green has ALS and has his own podcast called Nothing Left Unsaid. Jamie Kimmel's right there above me. He's the fourth wheel of the four-wheel drive. Billy, let's deep dive. Oh, this is brought to you by Hill Kelly Dodge. I want to announce my title sponsor. Has been there for years for me. So everybody, Hill Kelly Dodge, Jeep, Ram, and Chrysler. I got me a Jeep. Billy, what you driving nowadays?
You know, it's funny. I'm looking for another truck. I'm in between vehicles right now and hunting for another truck. So wish me luck.
Is it going to be a four-wheel drive?
You know it. It's got to be. You know.
No. Man, Billy, we had a blast last night at the Pensacola Booster Club dinner. Walter Lewis came down, and Bob Baumhauer drove over from Orange Beach.
Awesome.
Yeah, I just told stories. It was great. DJ Petway, Catholic High, Pensacola Catholic High, great kid that went to Bama, won 3 national titles. Yeah, he's got 3 rings. Yeah,
wow.
I coached him at Catholic, and I would tell him Bama stories till he was like, didn't want to hear anymore. And I would come in with an Alabama hat, and the next day he would have the same Alabama hat. So I kind of knew that we had a pretty good insight to sign him.
Well, it's good to catch up with the guys, after years go by too,
Yeah. Yep, he owns a fence company now, Precision Fence, for all you out there. He's going to be a new sponsor here on the show. As Coach's Corner has gotten a few more new sponsors. We'll announce those in a little while, but let's deep dive into this. Today's show is about position, characteristics of a football position. And because I played mainly safety, we're going to talk about the position characteristics, what makes a great safety. Billy, you play D-line, so you're going to talk about the characteristics that make a good D-line. And I guess I'll do this. I'll go through the characteristics one by one. And instead of reading it all at once, we'll break it up, and I'll stop and ask you if D-line needs the same characteristics or trait to be a good one. All right. Safety has to have good – right. He has to be quick, kind of like a cornerback, because he has to cover wide receivers man to man. Safety lines up all over the field, and he ends up in more places than any other position on the field. For example, he could be on the line of scrimmage, or he could be 15 to 20 yards off of the ball. He might blitz through the A gap, center guard gap, or off the edge outside the tackle. The safety could have deep coverage responsibility, and sometimes it was between the hashes, which is about 17 yards, or if you're in cover 2, you have to cover half the field. For you don't know out there, the field is 42 1/3 feet wide. That's right, 52 feet and 1/3. That's how wide a football field is. You got to cover 26 yards. Now, that's why high schools don't play cover 2 much, because the safety can't cover 26 yards. College, they play a lot. Pro, they play even more. I'm glad Kirby Smart played cover 2 in the 4th and 22 situation in the national championship game. And the corner did not get a jam on the wide receiver. He gave him a free release, which is a cardinal sin for the corner in cover 2. Anyway, I digress. So the safety has to play all over the field, man. That's a lot of responsibility. Okay, so he has to have good feet in order to cover all those areas. And he also makes the calls, and we're going to talk about how he communicates these coverages to the other defensive players. All right, Billy, he's got to have good feet.
Yep. Yeah.
I'm sure D lineman. Matter of fact, isn't that what George O'Leary told Chuck Sweeney when he came over to play defensive line? Coach O'Leary said, "You don't have good enough feet. Get back on the O line."
We were always, I was always coached that your better athletes are going to be on that defensive side of the ball, and that covers everything from athletic ability to footwork to reaction time. And a big thing that I thought about was when I first started talking about this with you was vision and reaction time. And those are things that really somebody has to have to be starting at a defensive position, especially up front.
Peripheral vision. Yeah.
Game,
let's talk about that. We're going to talk about that, Billy.
The situation changes in split seconds. You have to react, and it's not, you come out of the huddle with a play, but that play could change in an instant. So it's reaction time that's the first criteria of a great defensive player, let alone defensive lineman.
Okay, so reaction time, yeah, and they got to have good feet, obviously, or they wouldn't be playing D line. All right, so reaction time. Let's keep that in mind, reaction time, because I forgot to mention that, but we're gonna talk about it when we talk about eyes, how you got to have good eyes. Okay. All right, let's continue on with another characteristic that all football players should have, but especially safeties. They got to be smart and able to communicate. Now, the safety, he makes all the coverage calls. Okay. And as a coach, when I coached, I relied on the smartest guy on my team. I would teach him how to play safety. The smartest guy, because he has to communicate the coverages not only verbally, but visually. In other words, this would be our, a signal, a hand signal, okay? Because if I called the play in from the sidelines, I can't reach the other side of the field yelling. It's too much noise. So everything's done by hand signals. Now we also have a color-coded system, Billy. Cover 3 was this signal, okay? The fist up high, and red, cover red, okay? R-E-D, 3 letters, cover 3, okay? Blue was cover 2, blue 2. It rhymes, okay? And then green was cover 4. Okay, cover 4 was green. So you have to communicate, and we use the color and hand signals. Every coach uses them, and that's why you got to be a great communicator. Now, the safety's job, and I made sure that they did this in communication, Billy. You make eye contact with that corner, and you give them the signal. Now, that's not the end of it. The corner has to give it back to you to make you realize that he got the call. Because a lot of times you think they're looking at you and you give them the call and then put your hand down. He wasn't looking at you. He didn't see it. He didn't respond to it. Okay. So they had to reciprocate this communication so everybody's on the same page. You cannot have one DB playing one coverage and the other 3 DBs playing another. For some reason, the football gods will find that one guy who messed up, and that's when they blow a coverage. You hear that on the announcement all the time. Oh, he blew a coverage. Well, that's not getting communicated right. So being smart and having been able to communicate, Billy, are big characteristics for safety.
Yeah. You look at 3 levels of defense. You look at the front, the middle, and the back, the back guys, the DBs, you look at the linebackers, then you look at the D line. So 90% of our communication from our D line was between us and the linebackers. And it was like a triangle. And we didn't have a lot of cohesion with the defensive backs, because that went from the backers to the defensive backs, and everybody would be on the same page. But
yeah, good point, Billy. Billy, that's a great point. That's a great point. The 7, they call it the 7-on-7. It's those 4 D linemen and 3 linebackers. They work together. Now,
right.
I failed to mention that not only does the safety have to communicate the coverage to the cornerback and other safety, 2 corners and other safety, he has to let the linebackers know what coverage we are in. So
Exactly.
the linebackers have the hardest job. They have to know the front's job and they have to know the secondary's job. You're right. D linemen don't care about DBs and DBs don't care about linemen, even though they're interweaved. They're interweaved in this respect. If you put pressure on the quarterback, that's going to lead to interceptions. If you have coverage in the back end, that's going to lead to sacks from the D line. So even though the D line and DBs don't communicate, they are still working in unison to help each other get better.
And that's why a lot of times when you look at most of your defenses, your defensive captains are mostly linebackers. Your captains are mostly that either that middle linebacker or that rush backer, because that's the middleman between the D line and the defensive backs, so
Right.
there has to be that communication level in order to run the proper defense.
Yep, we had a lot. We had captains. We had 3 captains on the defense. Me, you, and Barry Hill. Barry Hill didn't play much offense, but he was smarter than us. Barry Hill was smarter than us.
Well, if you remember when the play came in from the sideline, Barry Hill was the one that called it in the huddle. So
right.
he played middle backer, which was the second level of defense if you go by levels, and communicated between us up front and you guys in the back.
Right.
So it's almost impossible, Paulie, for me to communicate something to you playing as a free safety or strong safety, and you communicate to me. It just
we didn't. No, we never talked. No, never talked. Never talked to the D lineman. No, never talked to him. Only in the huddle when it was freezing cold up in Foxborough playing against Flutie and Boston College, who Cornelius Bennett still mentions. Hey, I gave them all a little my piece of my mind because they were so cold, Billy. They didn't even want to play. They didn't want to hit or anybody. They didn't want to play. They didn't want to be there. That's how cold it was.
Not used to it, man. Not used to it.
No, and sidebar before we move on, Dan Rasevich played the second most games in Canadian Football League history. My teammate and roommate in Toronto. He will be on the show coming up here in a week or two. And he played in games in Saskatchewan, Regina, up there that was 20 below, 10 below. And that's not the wind chill factor. Whoa, yeah, get you some of that. All right, so they got to have the DBs and everybody. They got to have good feet. They got to be smart and they got to communicate. There's no dumb guys in the NFL. People think, oh, he's dumb. No, he's not. All right, let's the next one. You talked about safety has to have good eyes. And Joe Cribbs and I talked about this, the Auburn running back. I played golf with him a couple of years ago. And Joe and I talked about the importance of vision for a running back, obviously, but also for DBs, because you need good peripheral vision. He has to see things without actually looking at them. You're probably asking me, Coach Tripp, what are you talking about? Well, you're doing it right now. You just don't realize it. If you look at something, you can still see and feel those things on your peripheral, okay? And so you can also see color, speed, light, and other things. Some of us are better than others at peripheral vision. I've seen players that can't respond to movement that it's only 20 feet away, but I've seen guys that can respond to movements 60 feet away. So everybody has different vision and different peripheral vision. Boom. That's it. That's eyes. That's what the eyes need to see.
That's a great point because, and I go back to, and we talk about when we practice, we talk about visual keys and we talk about pressure keys. Now, when we did a lot of 3-on-1s doing defensive line stuff, and the guy in front of you is your visual key. But as you're focusing on that middle guy, the peripheral comes in from that guy on the right, that guy on the left. So
Right.
that is vital to every good defensive player. And again, Paula, you take away from running back or quarterback, you look at offensive linemen, it's all about tunnel vision with them guys. They have one job. They can almost look at the guy they're going to block. And if you catch a guy that's not a great player, he's focusing on that guy he's going to block, that's a big tip-off for a good defensive lineman. So peripheral vision is vital for every defensive player.
Yeah, defensive lineman, I can see it trying to get a double team. Yeah, you're right about that. That's a good observation. The offensive linemen, they know who they're going to block, so they don't have to look at other people. Now, they do, in certain situations, but they don't have to have as good peripheral vision. All right, safety has to have great hands, okay? Good ball skills enable safeties to break up passes and get interceptions. Coach Saban once said that the most important characteristic a defensive back can have, okay, is how he high points the ball. Think about that. That was Saban's that was his most critical characteristic when he evaluated a defensive back, is how he plays the ball up high. He has to have the potential to make big plays, because one false step for a DB, 6. D line, Billy, I love you guys. I love the D line, but one false step from you guys isn't going to, it might not make it. Might very well have them break through the line. Yes, but it's not going to be, 6 points usually if you take a false step. With a DB, if you take a false step, your responsibility is heavier than linebackers or D. And I used to tell my DBs, listen, you guys got a lot of responsibility, man. More than anybody, and I used to explain to them. If you tell them that, it's in one ear and out the other. So you have to tell them why, right? Tell them why, and so you have to be willing to accept that. If you're going to panic or choke, you can't go on the field. And I would tell them the difference between panicking and choking. Okay. Yeah. Choking, you're thinking way too much. You're thinking about too many things. Okay. Panicking, you're not thinking enough. You're just mind has gone blank. You can't do either one of those. Okay. So you got to have great hands. Saban said it. Coach Bryant used to say there are only 6 to 8 big plays in every game. So that's why, you have to be ready. I remember my first game in the NFL. I got 2 picks, a fumble recovery, and I caused a third pick. I tipped the ball for a third pick. Okay. Got my hand on it. My linebacker caught it. So I got 4 turnovers in my first game in the NFL. Well, it was only because I could find the ball and I went to the ball and had good balls. So that's really the best characteristic of a DB. Billy, I know you guys don't have, but you got to have great hands as a D lineman. Talk about how a D lineman uses his hands.
Well, that's a great point, because hands for a DB are used for catching footballs, used for separating, separating blocks and things.
Blocks, right.
For the D lineman, okay, it's very, very high on that list of things that must happen. You talk about, and I always talk about elbow to hand, and all the strength things we ever did was all forearm to hand. Everything was gripping, pulling, pushing, everything. There was no bicep. It was all forearm work and grabbing and pulling. So It was vital to the position you played. Now the game has changed. We know that. Back when we played, it was a strength game, and everything was inside, which was grabbing, pulling, pushing. Everything was that. It was all 3 points of contact. These were the first 2, and your head was the third point. So hands were vital. Forearm work, we spent hours a week doing towel pull-ups. doing plate raises, doing everything that was grip work. We used to put old jerseys over the pull-up bar, grab onto them, and do our pull-ups off the jerseys because that's what we were grabbing when we played. So,
well, talk about hand placement and the difference between a run hand movement and a pass rush hand movement.
Well, the thing is too, and along with hand placement goes. I wrote it down here. We talk about leverage principles, hand placement, and it's too bad Blaze isn't here because Blaze has got a great program with hand fighting, and a lot of stuff now is they're not actually. We used to actually grab on, push, and when you felt that pressure, then you dropped and pulled, you swam or you ripped and all that stuff. Now they're into when the offensive lineman's putting his hands on you, they're going right to rip, swat away,
grab
like
it, swat, swatting and grabbing.
Yeah, all that hand fighting stuff, which is a lot of
martial arts.
A lot of martial arts stuff.
This was Blaze was a black belt in that.
Exactly. Blaze used to travel all over teaching that hand fighting. And back when we played and back when I played, it was there, but it was more of once you make contact, you grab on and you use that man like a steering wheel. And on top of that came the squat strength, the bench strength. If you weren't squatting 600-700 and benching 400 or 500, there was no sense of doing this stuff because you didn't have the upper body strength and the core strength to do that.
Right.
So guys that weren't that physical would resort back to the martial arts angle of hand fighting. So to go back to what your original point was, hands are very vital to what happens. And with us, we were, you look at our fingers and stuff, and everything is twisted, broke, and it was all about it. And the year I went into the NFL, they got rid of the head slap the year before, so they took that head slap to the ear out, and we had to drop it down to head slap it to the shoulder. So you're still using your hands, but now you're clubbing to the shoulder instead of the head.
All right, great stuff. That brings us to the last characteristic, at least that I can think of for that would make a safety great, which is versatility and the ability to tackle. A good tackler actually possesses another subset of characteristics. Let's start with aggression. In Pop Warner, middle school, high school, college, and even to a certain extent the pros, there exists a degree of physicality, levels of physicality, okay? In other words, at every level, you can identify the big hitters. They're not a dime a dozen. They're actually quite hard to find, okay? And to be a good tackler, you need a combination of things. You need that aggression, and you also need technique, and you have to know when to use them, okay? Manifest, for instance, the technique used, depending on the situation that you find yourself in and the wide receiver and or running back, quarterback that's running the ball, okay? So I'll give you an example. Open field tackle requires a different technique, a totally different technique of tackling than it does if the guy's running through the line with guys dragged all over them. Or if the running back's heading to the sidelines to, get outside on a sweep and you got him cornered up against the sidelines, that's a whole nother different tackling technique, okay? So you have to know when to use them. You have to know when to use the aggression. You have to know when to pull back, and you have to know when to strike like a cobra. For instance, open field tackling, you come up and it's just you, man. He is broken through the line and linebackers. They are gone. It's you and him between 6 points. Now, what you have to do is come up, break down, and stay square. You cannot get turned because if you get turned one step with him and you can't turn back again. So you have to stay square with him. Let him make that move that is close to you. As soon as he gets close to you, his first step, he's not going to run right at you. Sometimes they do, and you have to take one for the team. That's why you see guys get run over, DBs get run over, and everybody goes, oh, well, you know what? That DB did his job. He sacrificed his body, because if he went after him, okay, to match the intensity, he would just juke him and he'd be gone. It'd be 6 points. So the safety either has to take one for the team and get run over or give up 6 points. That's your decision. Okay. So you have to know when to tackle, and you also have to cover guys wide receiver. So not only do you have to tackle like a linebacker, but you better cover like a quarterback or you're going to get embarrassed. So safety has such versatility. He's a hybrid. He's almost like a cornerback / linebacker. You know, he has to do everything. So in recap, safety has to be quick, smart, great eyes, great hands, willing to sacrifice his body, know when to be aggressive, know how to tackle. All that's required of a great safety.
Yeah, that's good. And I threw a couple. We talked about a little bit about mental and physical toughness. And one last thing I threw in there for all defensive players, and you got to have a short memory. You can't dwell on a small mistake. Okay, nope. If you go to the sideline and you gave up 6 points, or you missed a tackle, or you didn't run the right gap, there's usually another quarter left in the game, or there's more time in the game, and we all know how things get heated on the sideline after a score or after a missed tackle, or but you have to forget that and go on and play the next one.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Billy. That's really the most to be honest with you, that's the most important characteristic for a defensive player. Is to have a short memory. Yeah, we used to talk in the NFL or college, Bama. We used to talk about it all the time. Man, we would get burned. We would get burned on a play, man. And if you're like, oh, poor me, or I should have done this, or I should have done that, or I'm pissed off at myself, or whatever, you are in trouble, man. You have to flush it. Matter of fact, a lot of coaches call it flushing it, right? To flush that turd.
Yep. I don't know. I don't care who you are. No matter if you're an all-pro or you're Joe Schmo, you're going to make a mistake. You're going to miss. You're going to miss a coverage. You're going to blow a coverage. You're going to take a wrong gap on a rush line. Right. I mean, I don't know how many times me and Blaze went through the same gap, and I must have heard it from O'Leary for at least another 3 or 4 days. So that it's going to happen, but
he would like one of those coaches that would roll back the film. And that was like the old projector film back in the days. It's not like hitting a button and rewinding it. He would actually go to the projector and rewind that thing.
He was relentless. It was those little things, that we did all week, that he demanded it to be perfect. And yourself, as the offensive line moves, the rush lanes move. So if you didn't keep that 5 to 6 yards apart, he'd measure it with a tape measure. And it was that precise. So
right. But, it's a game of inches. It really is. In false steps. That was a huge word in every coaching defensive vernacular, man. You cannot take a false step. And from the very, I would tell you don't want to confuse the kids, right? Because they could choke or panic, like I mentioned earlier. So I would give my DBs just one train of thought. That's it. Right before the snap, just one train of thought, and that was, what do I do versus a run, and what do I do versus a pass? Just
exactly.
So you have to read. That's why I don't like 7-on-7. No, I hate 7-on-7 for that fact. You know why?
Yeah.
Because everybody knows it's a pass, every single play. Well, what that does is it trains your mind. It trains your mind that everything's a pass. Well, guess what?
Right.
Teams run like 60% of the time, you idiot. So if you're training your brain for pass all the time, you're not reading running. You're late. It took me 2 weeks. It took me 2 to 3 weeks in the fall. But to retrain my kids from 7-on-7 in the summer, just automatically backpedaling, flying out of there, because I don't like to fly out of my back pedal. I teach a walk out of my back pedal, and if it's a pass, you get into a hard back pedal and then turn, right? So I don't teach, I mean, it's just. But I got to tell you, I read a book on Jim Thorpe, the greatest DB in history. Well, the greatest athlete, I should say. But I read this book called A Path Lit by Lightning. That's what his name is, Wathohuk. Okay? Love Jim Thorpe. Loved him. Yeah, that means Wathohuk means a path lit by lightning. Well, when I was 15 years old, I got hit by lightning. So I always took a liking to Jim Thorpe, and he was an amazing baseball player, the greatest track athlete in the history of sport. And he was, but to read this book by David Moranis, I think, wrote it.
He was voted the best athlete that ever lived. So
yeah, the what is it? The top DB in the college still wins the Jim Thorpe Award, right? Yeah. All right, Billy. Thanks, man. Thanks for being part of the show. It was a great show.
Absolutely, man. Great to see you again.
You too, buddy. Love you. Peace.
Okay, you take care, Paulie.
I'm not flipping you off. Peace. See you, buddy. Wow, Billy Pendock, great stuff. I want to thank all our great sponsors. Hill Kelly Dodge, our title sponsor. Thanks for all of them. Stay tuned for these messages. Without these great people, this just wouldn't be possible. Have a great sports week, everybody. See ya.
Arbitrium Consulting for all your fencing, landscaping, pressure washing, tree trimming needs. Call 850-483-0350 for your free estimates. Serving Pensacola, Gulf Breeze, Navarre, Fort Walton, Destin, Perdido, Gulf Shores, Foley, and the entire Gulf Coast. Arbitrium Consulting is owner-operated, fully licensed and insured. Call today, 850-483-0350, the official landscaper of Coach's Corner.
Hey, Bama fans, this is Will Moore, president of the Pensacola Bama Club. You can find us at PensacolaBamaClub.com. We are your official alumni chapter in the Pensacola and surrounding areas. Membership is available to all alumni and all Bama fans, so come see us at one of our many events throughout the year. Our Bama football watch parties are the next best thing to being in Bryant-Denny Stadium. We even serve authentic stadium hot dogs. Membership, event, and contact information will be found on our website at PensacolaBamaClub.com. Roll Tide.
For 30 years, you have seen the orange Beck signs all over the Gulf Coast listing a property for sale or lease. Beck Partners is your trusted advisor in commercial real estate, property management, commercial and personal insurance. Senior Vice President David Valletto has been with Beck Partners since 1989. Take advantage of his wealth of knowledge by calling him today at 982-7352. 982-7352. Extensive experience in all aspects of leasing, sales, management, and site selection will make sure your expectations are exceeded.
Did you know there's a place where you can get good neighbor service and surprisingly great rates on your home and auto insurance? Yep, and that place is, ta-da, State Farm. Here's the deal. State Farm agent Will Rentschler is your go-to agent in Pensacola, Florida for the service you deserve at the price that you want. So stop shopping around. State Farm agent Will Rentschler has you covered. Call 850-433-4678 for your surprisingly great rates today. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Legal disclaimer, individual premiums will vary by customer. All applicants subject to State Farm underwriting requirements.
My name is Steve Reynolds. I'm the manager and owner of Cordova Lanes, and we help keep your mind out of the gutter. Cordova Lanes is part of the community of Pensacola. Being here for 43 years, we've entertained more people than any other bowling center in the city. We self-fund for a living. Cordova Lanes is located at 2111 Airport Boulevard in Pensacola, behind Cordova Mall. Come on out and see us at Cordova Lanes Bowling Center. Thank you.